It's time to have your say because it's time for the Q&A. Welcome to Ask SCW here on SCW on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel, choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Answering your questions in the wrestling community once again here on Ask SCW. If you want to be involved on the next video, then drop a comment here on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should be covered on your screen right about now. Leave the hashtag AskSCW with your question. I know to include it and give you a shout out in the next video. Going to be touching on WWE Impact Wrestling mainly today, and the hot topic is Kevin Owens against Roman Reigns potentially at TLC, and that's going to be kicking us off here today. So without further ado, let's get straight into the questions, and the first one is from Vigilante. We all know a KO versus Roman match is going to be a classic like the Royal Rumble match, but this time Roman is heel. What do you do about cutting promos between the two of them? Like, what type of war are you expecting in this rivalry? What a great question to kick things off this week for us, and I must say, I am expecting this to be the TLC match. And like you say, we've got a different format this time to what we had at the Royal Rumble, which is nearly 4 years ago now. Kevin Owens will be the babyface going in and Roman will be the heel. Roman has suited so well to being that heel, the tribal chief, the bloodline, and it seems to me that is what's kicked things into gear for Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens has taken exception to the beating he took a number of weeks ago from Jey Uso, and now he's had enough. This time round, he's decided, seeing the beatings continue on Daniel Bryan, that he is going to actually challenge the head of the table. And the brutal beating we had on SmackDown, we had chairs involved with, KO destroying Jey Uso there. He was sitting at the corner of the table, the head of the table, if you want, and calling out Roman Reigns. Why are you not helping Jey Uso in this situation? It seems that we've almost got the KO of old. We've got the prize fighter back in a babyface form, and it's been a long time coming. It's the form of Kevin Owens that I want to see. I like this KO better than any other type of KO that we've seen previously. As much as KO is great at comedic stuff, he's great on the mic. On NXT this week, I did have a little bit of a disconnect with the KO show, with the way that was set up with Leon Ruff. It was too cheesy, and for someone who likes cheese, it was too cheesy for my liking. But seeing this more serious side on SmackDown, this is the direction I want it to go. And we've mentioned chairs already. We've seen the head of the table, which is a big theme here for Roman, why it should play into TLC. We should get ladders involved on the build as well. Maybe we see something where Jey tries to get retribution on behalf of Roman next week, and KO maybe places him on the table this time, jumps off a ladder, goes through the table through Jey Uso, just to really send that message. But like you say, the promo work is the key part here, because Roman Reigns is not going to accept the way SmackDown went off the air, very likely. He's going to take it out on Jey Uso, which is playing into this storyline. Kevin Owens not liking the way Jey Uso is being treated in the bloodline. Is this how you treat family? And Roman will continue to do that. He'll use Jey Uso to try and get that retribution. Forget as well that Jey Uso is starting a program with Daniel Bryan as well now, it seems, on SmackDown this week, and continuing on. Perhaps they'll be on a pay-per-view. Maybe we may even get a tag match on the build-up. Roman will probably make references to Kevin Owens' family, may take a few cheap shots at being head of the table. There could be different directions that you could really take this. But what I really liked as well, talking smack this week, is a must-watch as well. The head-to-head conversation with Kevin Owens and Paul Heyman, that needs to be shown on SmackDown. And I want to see more of that as well. There's certainly different layers you could use for this program, and I think it's very exciting overall. And if it's booked right, this could really propel Kevin Owens back into around that main event scene, because it's for so long we've not seen this of Kevin Owens. I mean, he's been kind of almost gone AWOL since that great program he had with Seth Rollins going into last year's WrestleMania. I know he had some time off of injury, but he's been almost a spare piece on Monday Night Raw. He's come to SmackDown, arguably, it's been a fair few quiet weeks. It's not been so much so far. This feels to be the first real program we've seen with Kevin Owens on the blue brand since joining, and it's good to see he's going straight in at the top of the card. Hopefully he will benefit from this, but I still do see at this particular moment Roman Reigns being the tribal chief, being the Universal Champion, continue as we go into Royal Rumble season. Austin Whitley with our next question now, and should WWE save KO versus Reigns for a bigger pay-per-view? Honestly, I feel like they could headline WrestleMania 37. Well, touching on to the last question there, as I say, Kevin Owens hasn't really been booked the best as of late, but one thing we should remember is that Drew McIntyre, this time last year, the push started for Drew. It started just after TLC around December. He went into Royal Rumble, had seemingly turned babyface, had momentum behind him. He won the Royal Rumble in what was a very well booked Royal Rumble, and the story there of Drew McIntyre of 2020 began from that point. And of course, he won the championship at WrestleMania. So Kevin Owens here, this is a starting point. If it was booked with great momentum, this could be a case where KO would be worthy of a WrestleMania spot. I do think that this match is bigger than TLC. I think it's a big four pay-per-view feel. I mean, like we said earlier in the video, this has previously been at a Royal Rumble a few years ago. I think it's worthy of the Rumble, it's worthy of SummerSlam, and it's worthy of Survivor Series. With KO's booking right now, I still think it's not quite WrestleMania. I think that there are bigger matches that we could book for WrestleMania at this point. I mean, of course, the dream match still is The Rock versus Roman Reigns, if that could happen. But of course, that's probably unlikely at this point. If I was to say what I think the biggest match on SmackDown could be, but it would involve this superstar going babyface, would be Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns. If Seth was to come back in and almost ditch the Messiah gimmick, go back to being babyface, that would be probably the biggest match on SmackDown you could have right now going into Mania, if you want to ready-made names. But I don't see that happening, if I'm being honest. Seth, of course, has rid himself into the sunset, and I think when he comes back, I think he has started after Survivor Series a brand new storyline that will probably be seeing him as the saviour of SmackDown going forward. But like I say, it all comes down to booking. If Kevin Owens is booked well, then sure, this could have been done at a later date. But for right now, I do feel it's at the right place at the right time. Seeing what Kevin Owens was booked like this week could be the thing that propels him going forward. You know, with momentum, he could be a favourite in the Royal Rumble, and maybe he could find himself in and around that top area of WrestleMania. But for right now, I do think that it's the right match at the right time. I think it's the most suitable for TLC as a stipulation. These two tore it up at the Royal Rumble a few years ago. I believe it was a no disqualification match at the time that they had. This time round as a TLC match, I think would be good, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And if it's booked really well, there's no reason why this couldn't be booked over to go to the Royal Rumble. You have to remember, Jey Uso had the match at Clash of Champions. It was done so well, WWE decided, hey, let's get another pay-per-view out of it. So this might be the starting point over a number of months. But right now, I do see it as a one and done. We'll have to wait and see, though, when it comes around to TLC. Speaking of WrestleMania 37, do you think that they're setting up Roman versus Kevin at TLC to possibly set up Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania? Well, I mean, that's always another alternative as well, because Daniel Bryan has main evented WrestleMania. He's been the champion as well. He was only recently WWE champion at WrestleMania 35, of course, Kofi Mania, dropping the belt to Kofi Kingston on that event. Daniel Bryan hasn't so much been in and around the championship picture since. I think that it was before seemed the rumoured direction that Roman versus Daniel Bryan was going to be what was going to be happening at TLC, but instead we have Kevin Owens. I believe at the moment that it will be one and done with Kevin Owens, and I think then Daniel Bryan gets the shot at the Royal Rumble. I think WWE has something in mind for WrestleMania for Roman Reigns as of right now. I'm really hoping it's not Goldberg. And I'm hoping it's not Lesnar either. You can imagine Lesnar coming in, you know, Paul Heyman being with Roman Reigns. Although that would be an interesting storyline, I don't want to see Brock versus Roman again at a WrestleMania. But I do think that Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns will be at the Royal Rumble. I think if we're going to get Daniel Bryan versus Jey Uso, for example, at TLC, perhaps in a chairs match, that certainly would suit the theme right now. Daniel Bryan could overcome that, and then, of course, you know, that would annoy Roman Reigns, and that could easily build up their match for the Royal Rumble if that's the direction WWE decides to go in. But that's what I think will happen at the moment. Time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. Noob and Co with a number of questions for us next now. Do you think the Asuka-Shayna Baszler feud leads up to Ronda Rousey returning to WWE? Who will win the sudden death triple threat match? AJ Styles, Keith Lee, or Riddle? What are your thoughts on Asuka teaming up with Lana? And do you think the Mysterio family are turning heel? Some great questions there. Let's start with the Asuka questions. Let's put them both together as they kind of link in at the moment, because I have a prediction of where I think this is going to lead to, and again, it goes towards TLC. Now, of course, Asuka gave Lana the championship match on Raw, which of course didn't lead so well after Lana being sole survivor. Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler didn't let that go for too long. It ended up being a tag team match between the two teams, and Asuka and Lana actually picked up the victory. Now, I must admit, I'm not such a big fan of Lana and Asuka being a tag team personally, and my reasoning for it is that I think this is the direction we're going to be going forward. I can see champion versus champion, which means there could be a potential of double champions once again. I believe it was Mark S. that put a question a long time ago saying about what if Charlotte Flair was to come back and take the spot with Lana to go against Shayna and Nia, because of course Nia actually put Charlotte Flair out of action. Now, as much as that would be a random team of Charlotte and Lana, I'd be more in favour of it because you wouldn't have a double champion scenario. If Asuka was to put her Raw Women's Championship on the line against the Women's Tag Team Championships on the line at TLC, arguably in a tables match, someone is walking away as a double champion, and I could see Asuka actually retaining the championship, and I could see that her and Lana actually would become the women's tag team champions, which I suppose would be good if you want to actually break up the team of Baszler and Jackson, want to move something going forward. You maybe have a new tag team that actually takes those championships. Maybe they don't see at the moment the right squad, or Mandy and Dana taking the belts from Shayna. Maybe they want someone of an Asuka level to do it, and maybe then Lana is an easy fallout. It's not something that I would be necessarily a fan of, but if you were to get into a singles program with Asuka and Shayna Baszler, say that made it to the Royal Rumble, again, it's lots of fantasy booking so far this week, it feels, here on AskSCW, but if that is the direction that was to go, that would be a great placement then if Ronda Rousey was to come back in and we could get Asuka versus Rousey at WrestleMania, because we're not going to get Rousey versus Becky Lynch, which I think is probably the biggest match that WWE could do if Rousey was to come back. But the next match that you could do that would be as big, especially with Charlotte Flair being out at the moment, I think would be Asuka, and it's a match as well we haven't seen before. Asuka and Rousey will be something different, something fresh, and after the year that Asuka has had being dominating of the Raw Women's division, forget how perhaps she's been booked in the last couple of months, not so much to do. She's been the champion, and she's been the champion for the majority of the year. She's had a great winning streak throughout amount of the year as well. Her and Rousey does feel like it would be a money match, and it would be a big match at WrestleMania. It all comes down if Ronda wants to come back, if she's willing to come back at this stage. Is it the right match for her? Who knows? We'll have to see. There's been rumours that she's been training again in the ring. Perhaps there could be something further down the line. We've seen pictures of her and James Storm with Roddy Piper's daughter as well. Maybe Ronda is going to make a comeback, and I certainly would love to see it. I think the Ronda coming back would be a big deal for the women's division. It certainly would be something that's missed right now in the women's division. But Asuka versus Rousey feels a big-time match. I would be keen for seeing it if it was to happen. As for Monday Night Raw, then who is going to win that triple threat match? Well, if you're to believe Mr. Dave Meltzer, this all comes down to Braun Strowman, believe it or not. Braun Strowman at the moment apparently picked up a knock at Survivor Series, some form of little niggling injury. It's not determined how long he'll be out for. If he's able to go this week on Raw, he'll probably find a way to get into this triple threat match, and it is expected that we'll have the Dogs of War going at it one-on-one, Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman at TLC. But of course, this triple threat match, if Braun is unable to get involved, we'll have it as normal, and the backup plan is there. For me, I would go with AJ Styles. I think that as the team captain of Raw, I think he would be the natural fit here to have this championship match. It would be great to see AJ Styles in the WWE Championship picture. I think that would be really cool to see that at TLC. But at the same time, I did wonder if we were going to get Keith Lee versus AJ Styles as a mini feud after Survivor Series, kind of that you weren't the captain, I was the captain kind of thing, and maybe that would leave Riddle through to go through for that championship. But also Riddle looked like he was starting a program with the Hurt Business on Raw, so maybe that's the direction for Riddle. My safe prediction would be AJ Styles, perhaps the pin Riddle, and he would get the championship match. But I do expect if Braun can come in, he probably will. But I would be much more in favour and really want to see Drew versus AJ more. Last but not least, the Mysterios. Are they turning heel? I don't think so. I'm going to say what I think the booking direction was with this week, because they certainly were heelish. If you're going to be heelish, don't do it on King Corbin. King Corbin is like the heel of heels. Everyone hates him, so I don't think you're going to necessarily come off that well as a heel if you're going to do that. I think they wanted to be Eddie Guerrero-esque of being, the lying, the cheating, the stealing kind of vibe. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work for them. It doesn't work the same. Eddie Guerrero was a once-in-a-lifetime type performer who could do that sort of thing. It shouldn't have worked for him, but he was so charismatic, he could make it work. It's not the same for the Mysterios. So for me, I don't think it is going to be a heel turn. I just think it's bad booking. But time will tell on it, as I've said on a couple of questions already. But there is a rematch expected, I believe, on SmackDown next week, which can't say I'm overly looking forward to, but hopefully we'll get more depth to the story from that point. But if I had to make a prediction right now, I think that the Mysterios turn remaining babyface, it would be strange for them at this point to turn heel, in my opinion. Mike, Italian Habs Mike, with our next two questions now. The masked guy who helped out Pete Dunne win the ladder match, do you think it's Pat McAfee, or will it be someone else that no one expects if he appears at War Games? Great question now. And number two, with TLC pay-per-view coming up, which TLC match has been the best one to date? Well, let's go into this. And let's start with TLC. We've done a lot of TLC up to this point. Let's wrap, I believe, in some sort of format, probably TLC here. And I do think that the best one, in my opinion, I'm a fan of the originals. I like the early matches. My favourite pay-per-view of all time is WrestleMania 17. And the TLC match on that, of course, was TLC 2, which was the Dudleys, the Hardys, Edge and Christian, which of course did have a lot of interference in that match as well, with Lita, Spike, Dudley and Rhino. Of course, ECW been bought out not long recently, so Rhino and Spike were making their features in the match in cameo form as well. For me, that was the best TLC match of all time. I think that that really stands the test of time. So many dangerous spots in the match. I mean, who remembers the spear from about 20 feet in the air from Edge onto Jeff Hardy? Just tables brutally being broken from the outside on the floor. Jeff Hardy doing a swanton off the top. I think it was Matt Hardy and Bubba, if I'm not mistaken, flying through tables, about 4 tables on the outside. It just was absolute carnage, and it just felt like, you know, from start to finish, things were just breaking everywhere. It's surprising that those bodies were able to walk out of the arena that night. So that one is my personal favourite if I'm going to be there. I will give, though, honorary mentions, though. The original one, the one before it, I mean, I've never seen nothing like it when it first happened. It was incredible at SummerSlam 2000 with those 3 teams. Of course, being in my teens for that as well, just was an epic time. You'd pop for that sort of dangerous vibe of wrestling in the Attitude Era. But 2 other ones I really like, just as honorary mentions. I really like the one between John Cena and Edge at Unforgiven 2006. I think that's a very underrated one, personally. I don't see so much, you know, talk about it on Twitter and stuff when people do their throwbacks. So for me, that is one I really enjoyed. And I really enjoyed SummerSlam 2009 as well, CM Punk and Jeff Hardy. I think that deserves a shout out as well. It was the main event of that show as well, and was a really killer TLC match. Let's move on to NXT then, shall we? And let's talk about who helped Pete Dunne. It certainly felt like the mannerisms of Pat McAfee. I personally feel that it is him, because he did say earlier in the evening he wouldn't be there due to Thanksgiving, which usually means he's going to be there, and it just was in the masked format. But the beautiful thing is that, and I believe you've said this on the comments here, so I'm going to give you the credit for this, is that, you know, Triple H doesn't always go for the obvious. There's usually some other direction that's usually hidden. And if you want to take Pat McAfee out of the match, say storyline terms, he's too afraid to get in there. If he could talk someone else to joining his stable, his group, it certainly then would be the right place to unveil them at War Games. The UE thinking they've got the advantage, but instead they're facing someone else. And I know you suggested Finn Balor in the comments. And I must admit as well, I'll give a shout out to Jonesy Chats Wrestling as well. He suggested the same thing this week as well, Finn Balor. If that was to happen, I mean, Finn Balor brought the UE back, and it could be he brought them back out of respect, but maybe he's looking to turn on them because Kyle O'Reilly broke his jaw in a couple of places and put him on the shelf, and he wants revenge. My only real negative with this idea is the fact that I just don't see Finn Balor as a yes man taking orders from somebody else. Finn, you know, he is his own man, and he has been throughout his entire time in WWE. I don't feel he needs a stable, but I do think that that stable needs him. I think it may need someone else. I've been sort of umming and ahhing if I'm a fan of this stable. And from a booking standpoint, I like the McAfee brand stable. I like the dynamic it's brought out of, you know, we've still got the serious Pete Dunne, and he feels like he is the heavy, the most important member of that group. I think Danny Burch from Characteristics is fantastic as a heel, and him and Lorcan actually feel a bit more important, but I don't see it as a stable that can really take down the UE unless the UE are going to implode themselves in the War Game structure. So it'll be interesting what will happen. I think because of the fact it is the least obvious route that they usually go in NXT, that for this time they will go for the obvious route. I do think Pat McAfee was the one, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some shenanigans that could cost the UE when it comes to War Games. But I will get more into that when it comes to my NXT TakeOver War Games predictions, which will be dropping on the channel this Thursday. So I hope that you and everyone that's watching today will be there to check it out. Next question is coming from Scott Robertson. I believe first time asker. Thank you, Scott, for your question. What was the match segment that made you fall in love with wrestling? Really like this question. It's quite a personal question, and I must admit, I'm going to go all the way back to where it began, WrestleMania 8. So that was the first event I ever watched, and I must admit, I was sat down. I was just a young kid, and I was sat down. Parents said, before you watch it, yeah, watch it, but do be prepared. It's scripted. These guys aren't actually, physically doing these things to each other. There is like an art to it. And I remember watching it, and I think Mr. Perfect was actually, cutting like a promo for TV. It was actually on Sky Movies in the UK back then, which usually would have been Sky Sports back in the old days, but was actually promoted for after, I think it was a Hulk Hogan movie that was on beforehand. It was like, hey, check out WrestleMania 8 coming up after this. And, you're sold when Kurt Hennig says something to watch something, you tend to do it, don't you? And I remember watching the show, and it felt amazing just watching the ring and so many people there in the audience. It felt special. It felt like a big deal. And obviously, I was quite young, so I didn't watch it. So I recorded it and was watching it the next day. And there's a little slightly funny story that's going to come with this. And the first match that was on that card was Tito Santana and Shawn Michaels. And you can't go wrong with those two. It was just a pure great wrestling match between these two. And just from that first match, I just was like, this is pretty cool. I kind of like this. And we had then The Undertaker versus Jake Roberts that followed it. That larger-than-life, character that The Undertaker is, you kind of take notice. Bret Hart winning the Intercontinental Championship and was one of my favourite matches at the early points. Bret Hart really stood out for me, and winning that championship just felt important. We had Ric Flair and Randy Savage. The championship match was match 4, and that just felt really personal and a big deal. So from those early points, those things really hit home. The comedic part of it is that on the recording back then, when you had the old tape and you put it in, you had the choice of the standard play or long play. It would cut off halfway through, so I'd only actually get to like match 7, which was the Natural Disasters against Money Inc. The amount of times I watched that tape, by the way, and still watched to see where the match cut off as a little kid was quite funny. But I did manage to get the actual rest of the show on VHS at a later point and managed to see it. But just that show just felt special. And I did watch more shows. I think the point that where I got hooked further from there, as I say, Bret Hart was a big influence early on. He was the main event at SummerSlam. Of course, that was in the UK, which of course is where I was born. And so watching that with David Boy Smith in the main event there, that felt like a big deal. I was definitely hooked from that point. And then not long after, Bret Hart became the WWE champion, defeating Ric Flair, which for me, that was it. I was sold from that point. So those are probably the key points of that first year that really hooked me in and made me a wrestling fan for good. But knowing the things that I knew before we even started, that added to the fantasy booking side of things. I was already in my head having ideas of who I think should be booked where and what should be happening, who should be winning, who shouldn't. I was always one of those, even at an early age, I was hating Hulk Hogan winning every single time. I was like, someone else should win. So yeah, there's all these little things that kicked in early, but the passion came quite early. And WrestleMania 8, it just felt mega important. So for me, that will be my main answer for you here today, because it's a special show, and I do hope I'm looking to do some old school reviews at some point on this channel, and that's definitely one show because for me, I'm probably biased, but it's where the journey began. So for me, that would be certainly a fun show to go back and review. Renier Porter, the next question now. You wake up as a Vince McMahon. What's the first thing you do? Probably fire someone. I don't know. This is a dangerous question, this isn't it? I'm going to give you what I think, if I was Vince McMahon, what should be going on. We need to get longer-term storylines. We need to have long-term plans for the booking like we saw back in those. I mentioned in the last question where the journey began. And you used to see storylines were put out over years, you'd go back and watch some of the old stuff then, WrestleMania 5, for example, the Mega Powers, Savage and Hogan was booked more or less like a year before, and every point there was something there where something was the next layer of the story. We don't really get that anymore. We do get it, but we don't get it to the same level. It feels that things are being booked on the fly week to week. Some things may be the long-term direction, but by the time we get halfway there, the direction changes. There's so many times that pushes are taken and gone. It just doesn't doesn't work for me. So I think that that's the first thing that needs sorting out is long-term storylines. We need to have back to bullet point promos. We don't have where it's all scripted from word to word. I want passion. I want creativity coming from my superstars. I want to see them sink or swim. Who should generally be at the top of the card? Who deserves to be there? You can see the people that are great on the mic and can make you believe a story. Give them some bullet points and just let them fly away. I think personally that's something I would like to see more of. And the last thing, less 50-50 booking. Honestly, take the people that you are going to build up as stars and make them stars. Literally, if they continue winning, people will start believing in them, and it will get to a point where it will work. And if you've got great creative stories that go around it, people are more likely to buy in, even if it's a character they don't want to see winning. There were times where perhaps it wasn't the superstar I wanted at the top back in the Attitude Era or Ruthless Aggression, but the story that was booked was strong enough for me to be compelled to want to see how it was going to go. And I think that that is something that I don't say is missing from today, because we get stories, but I just feel like they are, sometimes they're strong in places. We have strong weeks, but I just feel that stories, they don't seem to have the same continuity. And I think a lot of stories are given up on far too quickly. And I think that that is what I think is probably the big miss when you look at things today. Things seem to be in motion and they don't take off. You only got to look at this year. The Hacker storyline didn't quite work out, and a lot of people were hooked into what was going to go on. Retribution as well. It's a shame how that has turned out. There's lots of different things, and you say, that could be fixed if there was just a bit more belief, a bit more clear direction of where things are going forward. Give them some wins, damn it, and let them go out there and be themselves and give some killer promos rather than these generic things we've seen a million times before. So those are if I was Vince McMahon, I was waking up, those were the things I would do, but certainly wouldn't mind spending some of that money as well. Chloe Price Boy of our next question now. And just to say, Chloe Price Boy is Straight As Josh here on YouTube. Does the intro, by the way, for this show. After this video, go and check out Straight As Josh. Give us a subscribe. Custom Titantrons, custom themes, all sorts. Go and check out. It's a fantastic YouTube channel. Highly recommended. But in the meantime, stick with us here on AskSCW, because it's tricky question time. And I tell you what, it's more tricky than Run DMC, this one. Who does the best pile driver? Can be any variation except for Mick Foley. And you are taking the difficult one away there. Mick Foley certainly would have been the natural choice. But any variation of the pile driver, I've got three for you here today. Of course, the most iconic and famous one is the Tombstone pile driver by The Undertaker. Of course, a bit different to normal pile drivers. Of course, the wrestler is facing a different direction in the body stand position. But of course, it is the most iconic pile driver. Of course, the most casual or even non-wrestling fans are aware of The Undertaker, and probably if they've seen anything of The Undertaker will be aware of the Tombstone pile driver. So that would certainly be my answer. As for the variation of like a Mick Foley style pile driver, I used to like rhinos. I mean, there are some great ones you even see right now. Impact in particular, Sami Callihan and Eric Young deliver some killer pile drivers. But Rhino, back in the ECW days, you know, he would hit some killer pile drivers. Spike Dudley would go flying off the apron through a table. And I remember, I think it was like Francine or Dawn Marie, someone that he did that to. And it was like end of 2000, early 2001. I remember like feeling like, oh God, you know, it looked painful the way it was done when it went through the table. And Rhino used to have a killer pile driver. It's certainly not something he uses today, but certainly was definitely worth checking out on the network, because he certainly had a brutal one. One I'm going to give as the official answer is that the package pile driver. I think that certainly always looks the most menacing and most brutal, and the pile driver is one of my favourite moves that's delivered in wrestling. Of course, for safety reasons, I understand why a number of promotions choose not to use it in the current day, but the package pile driver just looks the most devastating of all. And of course, Pentagon, Penta El Cero Miero, he literally always delivered a devastating one. Particularly, you'd see in Lucha Underground a lot, where you'd have the superstar in between the legs, cradle the legs, run halfway across the ring at like a blistering pace, and just land that pile driver. And it used to just feel so devastating watching it. I believe Kevin Owens has done a few of these in his past as well, if I'm not mistaken. But that would be the variation of the pile driver that I think definitely, it looks the most effective in my opinion. And definitely Penta certainly has a nasty looking pile driver, to say the very least. Let's move things on to Impact Wrestling then. And Raw's Impact has got a great question for us here now. Since Impact pulled off having Susie and Su Yung standing next to each other, question is, do you think Impact could pull them off having Susie and Su Yung team against Deonna Purrazzo and Kimberly? Because that would be an interesting tag team match. It certainly would, and of course, it was a great trick of the camera, the way that was done this week. But the thing is, though, the trick of the camera, it works while there's no fans around. Maybe they could make it work with no fans around, have a lot of editing used in, maybe they could make it work with that other person standing on the apron, making sure you don't see the other person's face. Maybe the other person that's meant to be Su Yung, maybe the face paint could cover it if you've got someone as the same build. It certainly could happen. It certainly would be a lot of work, but I don't say it's out of the question to happen. Final Resolution is only around the corner. I believe it's December 12th that show is going to be hitting. We're going to start getting matches for that shortly. They wouldn't have done this if they didn't have some sort of plan to pay it off. Certainly with a live crowd, I think it's too difficult to pull off. But in this current climate, right here, right now, in this rivalry, it is something that I suppose with a lot of time and certainly a lot of effort, I think it can be done. I would be intrigued and interested. Like you say, it's an interesting match. If they were to make it, I would be most invested in that match of the entire card, purely on the basis of how they would be able to manage to pull that off. But certainly would be interesting. It certainly would be something, as I say, it would be interesting to see him. Final Resolution, it could happen. We'll have to wait and see. Impact this week or next 2 weeks, maybe we'll get that match given to us. But certainly would be in favour of it. Let's see if it happens. Next question is coming from Ty World Order, and this week saw Impact Wrestling debuts of the C-Stars, of course, that's Ashley Vox and Delmi Exo. We had Killer Kelly, Renee Michelle, and, oh my god, going to keep that one clean, Jazz. Is there any division in wrestling, men's, women's, or tag, as high as the ceiling as the current Knockouts roster? Could Impact do a Knockouts-only show? They certainly could, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Impact Wrestling, perhaps under the old TNA banner, I think they did a Knockouts only show previously. I think it was around the Terrence around Dollhouse times back in, I want to say 2013, 14, around that area. Someone please let me know if you know in the comments exactly when that was, but I believe they've done it previously. They easily could do a show just devoted to the Knockouts. There's so many women on that division, like I say, 5 more coming in. We've got 16 in the tag team tournament alone. That just goes to show then, of course, when you've got the Susie, Su Yung character going on as well, you could make easily, arguably, 18 knockouts in a division. It's strength to strength, and there is a lot of depth in that division, and it is arguably the best women's division in wrestling. There is only one other women's division that would come close in category, in my opinion. And of course, if you said WWE is a collective, yes, but a lot of them are split into divisions, and I think that that's certainly what makes that pulled apart, because you don't have those dream matches maybe that you want to see. Perhaps, for example, I really want to see Rhea Ripley against Bayley. I think that would be an awesome match. But NXT has got a fantastic women's division. They are the only women's division to me that could even come close to the Knockouts division. But the Knockouts division is an amazing division. Like you say, the depth involved in that, there almost isn't another division like that in wrestling. Like I say, perhaps NXT Women's is the only one that comes close. For another division, if you're going for men's or tag, I mean, tag AEW do have a collection of top tag teams out there. Certainly 1 or 2 more could definitely improve it even further. But the Knockouts division is unbelievable. It's a different level. What I like about it as well is that not only now have we just got the Knockouts division, we now have the tag team championships coming back as well. It gives something for more of these knockouts to do when they're not in the championship picture. That arguably hindered a lot of them, keeping them off TV or minor programs previously. Now they've definitely got something to chase for, even if they're not in the top end of the program. For people like Kira Hogan, Tasha Steelz, now Havoc and Nevaeh that are in the semi-finals, this could be a big moment for them in the tag team division going forward. So yeah, it's exciting times in Impact Wrestling. Really a big fan of the Knockouts division. Definitely would happily see a Knockouts only show. I think that certainly they would absolutely steal it. Maybe one of their specials on Impact Plus should be Knockouts only. I want just that weekly TV. Give them their own pay-per-view. I think that would be pretty epic as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it, and long may they continue the good work that they're doing. Wrestling is great, and you're not wrong with that. Best era of TNA, 2002 to 2004, 2005 to 2009, 2010 to 2014, we've got 2015 to 16, or we've got 2017 to present. There are a lot of different options there, and I'm going to be right honest from the start. I have not seen everything from the TNA Impact Wrestling era, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would tell me that the right answer for this is 2005 to 2009, and you certainly would be within that argument saying so. Samoa Joe coming in, Kurt Angle, of course, the main event, Mafia, Sting, AJ Styles. I mean, the TNA originals, I'm sure there is some epic moments there that I certainly need to go back and watch. So I am certainly going to say that I'm sure a lot of people would say that is the right answer, but I haven't seen it, so I can't judge on that point. I first came into Impact Wrestling as a fan in 2010, was probably the starting point for me. I definitely was invested from that famous January 4th show that really pulled me in, and I stuck around for about 18 months. I think my point that pulled me away was the Immortal stable. I kind of got quite quickly fed up with that, so I did stop for about another 18 months. But the Aces and Eights were what pulled me back in, and of course seeing Magnus at that time as a UK star, of course rising seemingly to become a main event at that point. Those couple of things pulled me back in at the time. I think that around that time was certainly an exciting period, particularly 2010. I really enjoyed the Motor City Machine Guns and Beer Money kind of series that they had at that time. The fans were really excited. The six-sided rings, of course, turned into a four-sided ring not long afterwards, but certainly was some exciting periods around then. But my answer, my favourite year, I mean, there's been some good times. I've stuck from 2013 to present, and there's been some great one-off years here and there, but I really enjoyed 2018. That for me is just a particular favourite year of Impact Wrestling. I think part of it is a bit biased as well because I'm a big Lucha Underground fan. A number of those talents came in, and of course at that point when we had the main event area of Pentagon, we had Phoenix. I mean, Austin Aries was challenging those guys, and we've seen the likes of Willie Mack come in, from WWE when released, Rich Swann coming, Sami Callihan. There's just so many people that were in making such a great roster in that period. And it just felt every show felt big and important. The Knockouts division had so much depth coming to it as well at the same time. I think Slammiversary in 2018 is my favourite Impact Wrestling pay-per-view of all time from what I've seen. So that is going to be my answer for you, 2018. I do feel that at the moment they're doing a great job, Impact, in the present day, but I would say that I don't think it's been as strong in the last 12 months as what we got, say, for a 2-year period before that. But definitely they're still putting on some great stuff, and they've got a really exciting, talented roster there. They're good at building those new stars. So I suppose I have to go with the more present day. 2018 will be my answer, but I do need to go back and watch more of this, and maybe we come back and we touch this question again at a later date. Pro Wrestling Predictor on YouTube. I believe a first-time asker. Thank you for your question. Why are Eric Rowan, EC3, Mike Bennett, No Way Jose, and other released WWE superstars not signed by any other promotion? Interesting question, because there are a number of talents that haven't been signed by other promotions since. But some good news. Mike Bennett did actually turn up in Ring of Honor this week. Of course, he had been involved with NWA for a championship match, but now he seems to be back in ROH, which I think is great to see, by the way. Of course, reuniting the original Kingdom with Matt Taven. Looks to be going against the Horror King, of course, Vincent and his teammate Bateman. Perhaps that's building towards Final Battle. I will be doing Final Battle predictions, actually, as we get closer to the date for that. Of course, that will be taking place on December the 18th, that show. So that will be coming up in mid-December. But EC3 will probably be on that Ring of Honor show as well. EC3 did do a little bit of work with Impact Wrestling going into Bound for Glory. It looks like now he's building up a feud with Jay Briscoe as well, Ring of Honor, in the last couple of weeks. Is Honor real? Seems to be a very interesting storyline that they have put together with that so far. But you mentioned a couple of other talents there. Eric Rowan is one that particularly surprises me there. And of course, No Way Jose, there is a talent there, but the problem is, I think that gimmick really has damaged him. He does really need to completely reinvent himself to get himself back into the picture. But there could be a number of different issues of why this is. There could be the talent themselves, perhaps not interested in the opportunities that could be perhaps given. They may have earned a lot of money from WWE, for example, particularly when being on Raw and SmackDown. That's usually where the big bucks are. But it can be the case the right opportunity hasn't come up. I remember Brody Lee having, I believe, an interview, I believe it was with Wrestle Talk at the time, suggesting that Rowan would actually favour going to New Japan. Now, of course, at this particular moment, that is quite difficult with the pandemic going on, and maybe Japan alternative ones, where if you want to travel Europe, for example, those sort of possibilities are not there. You've only got the likes of these indie ones like Primetime Wrestling, for example, that you can make an appearance on, unless you are, wanted by the likes of Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, AEW, and perhaps they don't have room for these guys. This can be a money issue for other companies as well. Of course, are signing some talents, but maybe can't go overboard and can't sign everybody because they have to keep afloat without having fans there. A lot of wrestling companies, they are not making money this year. They are losing money. It's only a company like WWE who lets so much of their talent go, who are making great money because they're not making losses on all these arenas that they were not selling out, still getting their Fox and USA Network money. These other companies aren't getting that sort of revenue, so a lot of other companies are really having to be careful with it. So this is probably why some of these guys are not being signed, but I expect to see them back on TV somewhere further down the line. There was even a rumor just recently that No Way Jose could be going back to WWE. There was a trademark put down, which was The Way. Be interested to see if that would link to anything, of course, and rather than No Way, it could be The Way, and maybe it'll be a different direction for his character going forward, and that certainly would be exciting if that was to happen. But it's an interesting time. It's a very interesting world we have in 2020 with this pandemic going on at the moment. Pro wrestling, of course, thankfully has managed to keep going. A lot of people are in work, but unfortunately there are a lot of people out of work, and that's sad to see. You don't want to see it. So fingers crossed things get back to normal sooner rather than later, and a lot of these guys and girls that are out of work can get back in, because there's certainly a lot of talent out there right now, and there's certainly there will be options when people will be able to sign these talents up. Dan the Man Williams of our next question now is the DWE. If you were a wrestler and you had a tag with any wrestler from the current day, who would it be and why? This is a really good question, this one. Well, I mean, you have to be strategic here if you're going to pick a partner. I want someone that's got a good track record with friendships, not going to stab someone in the back, which is quite hard to find in pro wrestling. The amount of people that turn heel or stab their tag team partner in the back, maybe don't treat people that well. You look at Roman Reigns, for example, how he's treating Jey Uso. I don't want to be treated like that. So, it's kind of a hard one to answer. But certainly for me, I'm going to be honest here, I'm not a wrestler. So if I was, I'm going to want someone that's going to do a lot of the work for me. So I'm going to look for someone that's probably a bit stronger, has the ability to be agile when needed. I've got it down to a couple of names. I think Keith Lee would be a great tag team partner because, I mean, what can Keith Lee not do? I think he is the future of the business. I really do think he is going to be a multi-time champion in the company in future. So, he would be great as a tag team partner, really. One other one, actually, it's just come to mind. Braun Strowman was a tag team champion with an 8-year-old. Certainly not something I like to look back on fondly, but I mean, hey, if Nicholas can be a Raw tag team champion, maybe I can be with Braun Strowman. That certainly would be an option down the line as well. But last but not least, I mean, Karrion Kross, I think will be my official answer, because the guy looks dangerous. The guy looks menacing. He's great in ring. And he has not been beaten yet in WWE period in NXT. And I think if he came to the main roster, which I still don't rule out, I don't see him necessarily going straight back to NXT. He could come to Raw or SmackDown when healthy. I wouldn't be surprised to see it. He would be an electric tag team partner to have, because that dude's scary. So you want him on your side. You don't want to be against him. That's certainly for sure. Last question this week comes from Cherry Jerry, and what are your thoughts on the AEW World Championship toy belt? Well, I did watch a YouTube video, by the way. I will leave the link in there, either at the end of this video if I can get it up on the side of the screen, or certainly in the description. So people do go and check out that the video there, the unboxing of the AEW Toy Championship belt. And I did look at it. I think from a design perspective, I think they look really good. I must say that I think that a lot of AEW fans, people that are into championship belts, certainly would be something they want to add to their collection. But what I would say is you did compare it to the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and I did see that there was a significant size difference between those two championships. And I think that certainly means that that championship for the AEW one is definitely more devoted to a younger audience rather than an older audience. So for me, I think that that's certainly what that, for me, screamed as a target audience. It's not something, I mean, I don't have any of the championship belts. Maybe I should bling the channel up. Maybe there should be one or two of these hanging up in the background. Who knows? But certainly be difficult, though, if I'm outside recording. But looking at it, I do feel that it certainly is a very good design. Maybe there will be a bigger size released somewhere further down the line for a more, perhaps, adult market, maybe. But I feel at the moment it's certainly targeting to a more younger audience. I do think, looking at it, it's for me, is a bit too small. but certainly is a great design. I think they've put a lot of effort into that championship belt, and I do think it will be very popular amongst the AEW buyers. But that's all for me this week anyway. Thank you for watching. Thank you everyone for your questions, by the way. It's so great. So many great questions coming this week. Follow everyone from Twitter this week. Let's go and follow each other as well. Let's grow together in the wrestling community. Be one big, happy wrestling family. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone that was celebrating it this week as well. Keep an eye out on the channel for more videos that will be dropping this week. Coming up tomorrow, AEW Winter is Coming predictions. On Thursday, NXT TakeOver War Games predictions will be dropping on the channel. And the video to go and check out from yesterday is 15 wrestlers that AEW should sign. And just before you ask, no, not all at once, but certainly I do recommend going and checking that video out. Certainly, it's for me really pleased with that video. I think that it certainly covers a lot of the areas that perhaps AEW could perhaps look to improve their roster, because the rosters do evolve, and of course if they are going to get another hour of television, certainly will be more TV time for people to go around. So yeah, I recommend going and checking it out. I do think that it's a good video that's been put together there, so please go and support the channel, go and check that one out now. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great day. You've been watching Ask SCW here on SCW on YouTube.com. Take care. Have yourselves a great day.